So today we have with us former Chief Election Commissioner of India, Mr. S.Y. Quraishi. He was the 17th Chief Election Commissioner and a former Indian civil servant. He was also served as a secretary in the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports. Mr. Quraishi has vast experience on how Indian politics and elections works, and we are really grateful to have you with us here, sir, today. So
Thank you very much.
so the first question about the One Nation, One Election panel report is: did you ever think this would become a reality while you were at the helm of affairs in the Election Commission of India?
No, that was long back. I retired in 2012, but this was first voted in 2013-14. In fact, when Mr. Modi became the Prime Minister, so he made this announcement, made a pitch for it, although it's not a new idea. He just flagged it, and he wanted a national debate and a consensus.
Okay.
So for the last 10 years, the debate has been happening, but no consensus has been arrived at. In the meanwhile, I have written several articles, I have spoken to the media several times, given both sides of the picture that there are certain good points in simultaneous election, but there are many problems and difficulties which I have always flagged. So, in fact, in the meanwhile, there was a parliamentary committee which debated it. Niti Aayog, law commission, they all came to the conclusion that it's not simple, it's not easy, not even perhaps possible. So now this was referred to this the high-powered committee, not to find the options whether it is desirable or not desirable, we should do it or not. They were given a mandate. It has to be done. Please tell us how to do it. So this committee has come out with what they think are brilliant solutions to say that how it can be done. But there are lots of questions, although I've not yet studied it in detail. When I do, I'll find 100 flaws in it. But from whatever little I've read, there are a whole lot of problems with it.
So before getting into the entire report of One Nation, One Election, one crucial question is, sir, how do you look at the composition of the expert panel committee? Do you think it was a fair composition?
Well, personally, I was very upset, and I still feel it was not proper to get former Rashtrapati to head this. Now, the Rashtrapati is an institution which is above all kinds of politics. Now, making him a chairman of a committee. Now, committees are galore. The committees are formed at the drop of a hat. And what happens to those committee reports? The committee report first goes to the law ministry, where a section officer first will examine it, and the undersecretary, that way it will be first examined, and they will examine the pros and cons. If there and if they have any honesty, they'll examine the pros and cons very honestly. So now, therefore, getting him into this was not a good idea. He is a perfect gentleman. He's a very fine person. He should not even have accepted it. It's an official committee, and he was not an official. He was the Rashtrapati of India. That was my first objection. And even otherwise, um, uh, I don't think it was the most brilliant possible committee.
Sir, the document, the One Nation, One Election Committee report that we're speaking about, notes that about 15 political parties, opposed the entire panel report, either by way of engaging with it or addressing their criticism, or that of dissenters, like the Tamil Nadu Election Commissioner, Mr. V. Palanikumar, actually stated that the One Nation, One Election scheme could potentially dilute the focus on regional politics. Now, so the question
Yes.
and the efficacy of local governance also. So, what is your take on this? Do you think Mr. Palani Kumar makes a sense when he says this?
Actually, he's not the first one to make this comment. In the last 10 years debate, that is the main point which has been made, that this is almost an attack on federalism. India deliberately chose in the constitution the system of government that we have, where it's a union of states, mind you. The constituting states have their own politics, have their own realities. So, if the local politics dictates the fall of a government, there is some migration of some MLAs from here to there, and because of that, so what is to be done? And of course, they have attempted this, attended to this problem But what is the solution? We'll know in detail, and we will discuss now and later in this conversation itself.
So one nation, one election, one of the key concern is could flatten the political diversity that has marked India's electoral scene since the 60s. Since the 60s, and when the synchronicity of the election process actually began, and much has changed, in the Indian political scenario since then, where the ascendance of regional parties in the large parts of the countries are seen. So my question to you is, how do you think one nation, one election fares in this particular backdrop?
Well, the way the things have been going on all these years, there were staggered election, but they were fine. There was hardly any problem. In fact, the problems which have been mentioned have been exaggerated. And what are the problems? That it costs a lot of money. It disrupts the development. It stops normal activity. It's all wrong. Why it is wrong? What does the model? Model code is blamed. Election Commission is blamed. What model? Just pull down the model code from Google and see what does it say. Only new schemes cannot be announced, and no new postings can be done. If you have posted somebody a month before or even a week before the election, that's fine. They appointed two election commissioners yesterday, and tomorrow the elections will be announced. That is fine, right? So what is the stopped is a new scheme. So to say that development comes to a standstill, why? Entire development work must go on, has to go on, and several times we had to summon the cabinet secretary when we heard that ministries have stopped signing files and approving proposals in the name of model code of conduct. We pulled up the cabinet secretary. Don't stop anything. Only new scheme. Now my question is, why is it the bright ideas for a new scheme come to the mind of the government only 2 weeks before the election? Having been in power for 4 years and 11 months and 15 days, those new schemes don't occur to them, and suddenly they occur to them, and then they are not able to implement them to seduce the voters because in the name of model code of conduct. So it is totally incorrect. Nothing stops, of course. And secondly, repeated election. Now, if you are sitting in Delhi, there is an election going on in Gurgaon. Does it affect your health? Or in Ghaziabad or in Noida? Forget about Nagaland or Kashmir or Tamil Nadu. So to say election is happening, the whole nation comes to a standstill. Well, the nation doesn't even know what is happening in the neighborhood. Only two parties get affected by election where, if it is happening everywhere. One is the election commission, because wherever the election is being held, we have to be there because we are conducting it, right? Secondly, the political party is concerned. If it's a national party, they are interested in winning that election. Therefore, they have to keep sending their leaders there. Except for that, nobody else's life is affected. Now, not even the media. For the media, it gives you a lot of activity and a lot of job. That you, if the election all the time, you are busy all the time. That's good for you.
Right. So, one of the biggest or the major strands of criticism in the last 24 hours has been that federalism will be struck a blow if one nation, one election actually comes to play. Could you give your a take on this, on how this would be the case in terms of settled law?
Yes. For instance, suppose we create a situation when we have a simultaneous election. Now, do you remember that Mr. Vajpayee's government fell in 13 days?
Yes.
And suppose we had simultaneous election, so obviously we'll have to have another election for Lok Sabha. And because of simultaneous election, we will also have to have 28 elections in those states. Why? Just because one party left the government in Lok Sabha, because of that Lok Sabha fell, the government fell. So why should 28 government of 28 states which have come with absolute majority, why should they be affected? And vice versa. Vice versa. So suppose the state government falls, will you have simultaneous election with Lok Sabha also? So therefore, although the solution which they have come out with, I find it totally wrong. Why? Because it was all done in the name of reducing the number of elections, but they have suggested increasing the election. Okay, well, there has to be election, but it will be only for the remainder period. What does it mean? That in 2 years there would have been two elections, but in this case there will be three elections now. And secondly, the constitution had provided a 5-year term. Why will they now? And why just 2.5 years? The remainder term maybe 1 year. So much of money, so much of effort that goes into election, and that term, those people who will only come in for 1 year, their money, their effort would be spent to prove what point. Why? What is wrong? The system which was working was fine. And finally, I would like to mention that is the point of view of the government, which has been keen to have a presidential form of government. Now, presidential form of government is fine when we have a charismatic prime minister, because surely when he is contesting, there is no chance for anybody, and the possibility is that the voter will also vote for the same party.
Right.
What in a situation when the leader is not charismatic, in which case the result will be just the opposite.
Right. Actually, that's a very important point. So the committee has proposed significant constitutional amendments. From introduction of a new article to help it align to the various tenures of the assemblies. It says some of the enabling amendments. This is a very crucial part. It says some of the enabling amendments would not require ratification by the states. Now, so the question is, do you agree with this sudden kind of constitutional amendment proposition that has been given, which does not require ratification of states, where state assemblies itself is concerned? Do you think it will actually ever pan out to a reality in India when such a statement is being proposed?
No, obviously there were lawyers there, top lawyers there. They would have examined it. Maybe constitutionally, what they say is correct.
Yeah.
That some amendments require ratification by 50%
But the,
states,
but the
some
the
don't.
question is, do you
And
think
they
this is fair?
mentioned that. Well, I'm not very sure, because I have to see, because they say that the reduction of the tenure of the house in the state does not require a state amendment. You are absolutely right. You are terminating their life, and you do not take their consent. So what is the unilaterally sitting in Delhi? You do that. So constitutionally, to my mind, it sounds questionable, but I really am not very sure to be able to comment with authority. But it will be surely a subject of litigation.
How can a wider debate be ensured in this subject of one nation, one election?
Well, wider debate actually has been happening, and they should have debated in Parliament, maybe based on the inputs coming in. And as you have mentioned, that the 15, 16 parties which have opposed, they are all from opposition, and the ones who have supported are part of the coalition. So, obviously, support and opposition both is a foregone conclusion. That's a more on political line. But the merit should be discussed by jurists, by political scientists, by media, and that kind of debate, although it has happened, but a little more serious, more organized debate. After all, parliamentary committee studied it, Niti Ayog studied it, Law Commission studied it, and why did they not say, oh, brilliant idea, go ahead and do it? In fact, politically also, I remember one BJD MP in one speech somewhere, Mr. Bhartrihari Mehtab from Odisha, he made a very interesting one-line comment. He says, "Ask the people what they want. It is our convenience, politicians' convenience that we are looking at. What do people want? People love frequent elections." And he gave the reason why they love the frequent elections, because that is the vote is the only importance they have. Most people, otherwise they are powerless. They have no other power except the power of vote. At least because of their power of vote, the Neta comes to them repeatedly, folding hands. Otherwise, how many times have we seen that MLA goes missing, MP goes missing, and they have to put up posters, wanted, Gumshuda ki talash. How many times has it happened? Because they never go back. They never come back to the constituent. So people love election. Thirdly, another thing again, people's perception, which I heard in a youth parliament in Pune some years ago, when a girl from Chhattisgarh made a very interesting remark that was in the context of money spent. I have been saying that 60,000 crore, which is some estimate by some organization, is spent on election. So, and effort is to cut down the expenditure. I think 60,000 crore getting spent is a great idea for India's economy. This is the money which is getting transferred from the politicians' coffers to the poor man. They will employ labor, the painter, the carpenter, the auto driver. It will go to them. It is good for the economy. So why are you trying to cut it down? And finally, if you really sincerely want to cut it down, there is a very easy procedure. entirely in the hands of the government. There is a cap on the ceiling of expenditure by a candidate, 95 lakhs for an MP. But there is no ceiling on political party expenditure. If you are contesting, you can't spend more than 95, but your party can spend 20 crores on you. So, what kind of level playing field? What kind of ceiling is this? It's a joke. So, put a ceiling on the political party expenditure, and it will come down from 60,000 crore to 6,000 crores. If you are sincere about this proposal, the reason that you're giving is really serious reason that you're giving.
Right. So, do you think one nation, one election actually undermines the concept of democracy and is violative of the basic structure of the constitution in any way?
Yeah, basic structure in the sense that federalism is the basic structure. As I said, India is a union of states, and union, every state has its own dynamics. It has own its politics. For any reason, the government falls. So why should it be linked with the fate of Lok Sabha? So it has been going on, and very often I've heard. You see, in the first 11 years, there used to be simultaneous election. Yes, very true. Historically, very correct. But what follows is also history. Why is it that the election got separated? Because Kerala government was dismissed. Later on, several governments were dismissed. That dismissal may still happen. And that dismissal may not be arbitrarily by central government, which has been a feature. It can also be for inner dynamics. As I said, some political party or part of coalition suddenly leaves the coalition. So the
Right.
government has to fall. So those dynamics, why should they be controlled by the convenience of the leaders in Delhi and election commission? For election commission, it's a wonderful thing. We conduct elections once in 5 years and play golf for the next 5 years. But our comfort, our convenience cannot be the consideration.
Sir, the committee has actually said that the Election Commission has the power to control Lok Sabha and state assembly elections. And Article 327 of the Indian Constitution gives them this right, or the power to make the provisions for the same. Now, sir, the question is, if it was always this simple, then why was it not it done much earlier?
Correct. I don't understand the word control. Of course, the superintendent, direction and control of all elections is the job of election commission, but that actually means management of elections, not to tinker with the constitution. Yes, we control the management of all elections at all levels, from president, vice president to two houses of parliament and two houses of state legislature. So that is what it means. Not in our power to say, okay, from tomorrow we'll do simultaneous election. Not at all.
So, what are some of the key areas that you think the report is lacking in?
Well, actually, unfortunately, I have not had time to read the report. I have only seen summaries, and that too sketchily, because lots of things have been happening for the last 2 days, and
Right.
I was busy in the media interactions, the writing articles, and things like that. So I have not read it in detail. But from whatever I've read, I find lots of flaws in it, and the one which I mentioned, that in the remainder of the period election, what does it mean? You have added one more election. Are you reducing the election? A second thing, a flaw, that panchayat election. Remind you, the prime minister originally had a very two lovely things: one consensus and one national debate, and the third was that all three tiers have to go together, so that voters don't have to go three times, and they go once and press the three machines at the same time. They say that panchayat election can be done 3 months later. Now, what is 3 months later? 3 months later or 3 years later is the same thing, because the same bandobast, same arrangement, huge, massive security, everything has to be repeated. How simplistic? How simplistic? So, who were these experts who came out with this suggestion? I'm surprised. I'm shocked. 3 months later, there will be another election. So, is that simultaneous election?
Right. Actually, it makes for a very important critique of the One Nation, One Election panel report. And so, my last question to you is, I think you've already covered it, but if you could just elaborate it to us in a little bit further. Do you envisage any kind of legal loopholes in this one nation, one election panel report, which, if it becomes a reality, could be challenged in the court of law?
No, it will, before it becomes the reality, it will be challenged, because if it becomes the reality, it will not be before 2029, for the simple reason that there are logistical issues here. Election Commission can surely do it. But what do we need? 3 times the number of EVMs. Because at the moment we have 20 lakh EVMs, which we recycle. Now, if and from Lok Sabha we say use the same machine in Vidhan Sabha, we can use the same machines in Panchayat. But if all three are happening together, we need to have all three machines in every booth. So we need to build 40 lakh more machines. So that manufacturing will take about 3 to 4 years and thousands of crores. Somebody must calculate that money. I can give you a ballpark figure. The one unit of the EVM with 3 components costs about 25 to 30,000 rupees, multiplied by 20 lakhs or 25 lakhs or whatever it is. So for 40 lakhs, because 40 lakhs more, because they have to be all present. That is one. So, and other issues also will be challenged legally. We need more security, more manpower, more security, because Lok Sabha election to us, our experience, is the most peaceful. As we go lower down, the election becomes more disputed, more contested, and more lawless. And
Right.
Panchayat elections, particularly, are lawless. Therefore, we need to have a lot more security. And
Right.
third, very important thing is that Constitution itself has provided for a separate, independent constitutional body, the State Election Commission, to conduct local body elections. Is not subordinate to Election Commission of India at all, and they will have their own opinion. I want a collector to be transferred. The State Election Commission says, no, I don't want him transferred. Everyday disputes will be there. So either since the government is in the mood to go ahead and do it, let them abolish the State Election Commission and give the entire thing to Election Commission of India.
Right.
Actually, once the Mirapal Moily Committee, which was going to the Constitution, they were going to recommend it. They came to us suggesting that we should also handle Panchayat elections. We said, thank you very much. Please spare us. Those elections are more complicated, dirtier, and whatever good job that we are doing will get jeopardized. So don't try to disturb something which is going on well. And they accepted our point. Otherwise, the thing would have been transferred to us.
Right, right. So I think you gave us some very valuable inputs in this interview. I think that was all. That was all we had to ask you. Thank you so much for your time, sir. And it was lovely having you over here at Bar and Bench.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.